What if $1.5 million isn't enough to retire safely? Most Americans assume that once they hit seven figures, retirement is basically secured. But one brutal market sequence can expose a serious weakness, especially when you're withdrawing money while your portfolio is falling. Welcome to American Dream Finance. Today, we'll stress test a $1.5 million retirement plan, show exactly why it can fail, and reveal a few simple adjustments that can dramatically improve your odds. And stay until the end, because the most important lesson isn't about having more money. It's about what you do when the market goes against you. By the end, you'll have a practical framework you can use to stress test your own retirement plan before it's too late. Imagine you are 65 years old with $1.5 million invested. On paper, that sounds like a strong retirement position. But here's the problem. The size of your portfolio is only part of the equation. What happens after you retire can matter just as much. Let's stress test this retirement plan using one of the toughest historical environments for a new retiree, the early 1970s. I'm not saying this was a normal retirement period. It wasn't. I'm using it because it shows exactly what can happen when poor market returns, high inflation, and withdrawals hit at the same time. Now imagine this retiree needs $96,000 a year to maintain their lifestyle. They receive $25,500 from Social Security, leaving roughly $70,500 that must come from the portfolio in the first year. That is about a 4.7% initial withdrawal rate on $1.5 million. And here's where we need to be careful. A 4.7% withdrawal rate is not a universal guarantee of safety. Research on sustainable withdrawals depends on the portfolio mix, time horizon, spending rules, inflation assumptions, and how the withdrawals are actually managed. So you cannot simply say 4.7% worked in one study, therefore 4.7% works for every retiree. That's not how retirement planning works. Now let's make the situation even tougher. Our retiree is invested entirely in stocks. The market drops sharply, then it drops again. At the same time, inflation is pushing living costs higher, and our retiree keeps taking money out. That's the real danger. Your portfolio is falling, but your withdrawals don't automatically fall with it. Suppose the portfolio drops from $1.5 million to around $850,000 after a severe market decline. The retiree still needs money to live. They can't tell the grocery store, the mortgage company, or the electric company, the stock market is down, so I'll pay you less this year. The bills keep coming. And if the retiree continues increasing withdrawals with inflation, they may be selling investments after those investments have already fallen substantially. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it is one of the biggest retirement risks people underestimate. The problem isn't simply that the market had a bad year. A bad year later in retirement can be very different from a bad year right after retirement. If your portfolio falls 30% after you've already spent several years withdrawing money, you may have time to recover. But if a major decline happens immediately after you retire, you're taking money out of a shrinking portfolio while it is trying to recover. That's a very different situation. Here's a simple example. You start retirement with $1.5 million. The market falls. Your portfolio becomes smaller, but your spending continues. Then inflation increases your withdrawal. Now you're taking a larger dollar amount from a smaller portfolio. That creates a dangerous cycle. Lower portfolio, higher withdrawal pressure, more selling, less money available to recover. And this is why a retirement plan can look perfectly reasonable in an average market scenario and still struggle badly under a different sequence. There's another important correction to make. The original example treats a fixed inflation-adjusted withdrawal strategy as if a retiree would follow it mechanically for decades. Real people usually don't behave that way. If a retiree sees their portfolio fall dramatically, they may reduce discretionary spending. They may delay a large purchase. They may skip an inflation increase. They may earn some temporary income.
They may change where the next withdrawal comes from. Those decisions can materially change the outcome. So this stress test isn't predicting that every person with $1.5 million will run out of money. It is showing something more useful. A $1.5 million portfolio does not automatically make a retirement plan safe. The biggest question is not simply, how much money do I have? The better question is, what happens if the market falls soon after I retire, while I still need income from that portfolio? That is the problem we need to solve. And the good news is that the solution does not necessarily require becoming extremely conservative or giving up your retirement. It starts with understanding where the pressure comes from. The goal isn't to predict the next 1973. The goal is to build a retirement plan that can survive when something goes wrong. Now let's fix the problem without pretending we can control the stock market. The first mistake was not having $1.5 million. The bigger mistake was expecting one rigid withdrawal rule to work no matter what the market did. A stronger retirement plan needs flexibility. Fix number 1. Don't increase spending automatically after a market crash. Our original retiree starts with a $70,500 portfolio withdrawal. Under a traditional inflation-adjusted strategy, that withdrawal rises every year, even when the portfolio is falling. That's where we can make a major improvement. Imagine the market drops sharply during your first few years of retirement. Instead of automatically increasing your withdrawal for inflation, you could temporarily keep spending near the previous year's level. You aren't permanently cutting your lifestyle. You're simply saying, this is a bad market. I'm going to give my portfolio some breathing room. That small decision can have a surprisingly large impact because the first few years of retirement are especially important. If you take less money out while the portfolio is depressed, you leave more shares invested. If markets recover, those remaining shares participate in the recovery. This is the basic idea behind retirement spending guardrails. You don't need to predict the market. You simply adjust your spending based on what your portfolio is doing. Fix 2. Don't make the entire $1.5 million depend on stocks. The original stress test used a 100% stock portfolio. That's an extremely aggressive assumption for someone who is just retired and needs regular income from their investments. That doesn't mean stocks are bad. Stocks are an important source of long-term growth. But retirement changes the job of your portfolio. You now need both growth and stability. A more balanced portfolio might include stocks alongside high-quality bonds or other appropriate cash-like reserves. For example, an investor could consider something like 70% stocks and 30% bonds, depending on their risk tolerance, other income sources, taxes, and overall financial situation. The exact allocation isn't the point. The important idea is diversification. If stocks fall sharply, the retiree doesn't want every dollar of their retirement assets moving in the same direction. And remember, bonds are not automatically risk-free. Interest rate changes, inflation, credit quality, and bond duration all matter. But a diversified portfolio can reduce the dependence on one asset class at exactly the time when the retiree needs stability. Fix 3. Build a cash reserve for near-term spending. Here's another practical approach. Instead of selling stocks every time you need money, you can keep a portion of your retirement assets in cash or cash equivalents for near-term expenses. For example, suppose you set aside roughly 2 to 5 years of planned portfolio withdrawals. That money isn't there to generate spectacular returns. It's there to provide time. Imagine stocks fall 30%. You don't necessarily want to sell a large amount of stocks immediately after that decline just to pay next month's expenses. A cash reserve can give you another option. You can use the reserve for spending while allowing your long-term investments more time to recover. But there's an important correction to the original example. We should not assume that cash will always earn 10% or 12% just because some short-term rates were high during parts of the 1970s.
Cash yields change constantly. Today's savings account or treasury yield could be very different from tomorrow's. So the purpose of the cash bucket isn't to beat inflation. Its primary purpose is liquidity and flexibility. Fix number 4. Create more income before taking more from the portfolio. There's another powerful lever that often gets ignored: income. Our hypothetical retiree has $25,500 in Social Security. But retirement income doesn't necessarily have to come entirely from Social Security and investments. Even temporary income can change the math. Maybe you work part-time. Maybe you consult in your previous profession. Maybe you delay retirement for a year or two. Maybe you delay Social Security, if doing so makes sense for your situation. The point isn't that everyone should work longer. The point is that retirement timing is a financial decision. If the market has already fallen substantially when you're planning to retire, postponing retirement can potentially help in 2 ways. You may avoid withdrawing from the portfolio during the downturn, and you may give the portfolio additional time to recover. Even a relatively small amount of earned income can reduce the amount you need to withdraw from investments. That's powerful, because every dollar you don't withdraw is another dollar that remains invested. The bigger fix: use multiple levers. This is the most important change. Don't build a retirement plan that has only one button. If the market falls, you should have options. You might temporarily reduce discretionary spending. You might skip an inflation increase. You might use your cash reserve. You might rebalance. You might generate temporary income. You might delay a major purchase. You might reconsider when you claim Social Security. And you might do absolutely nothing if the situation doesn't require a change. That's the key. Flexibility is part of the retirement plan. You don't need to know exactly what the market will do. You need a plan for what you'll do if the market does something you didn't expect. And that's how we turn the original $1.5 million retirement plan from a rigid calculation into a more realistic strategy. The goal isn't to eliminate every risk. That's impossible. The goal is to make sure one bad sequence of returns doesn't automatically determine the rest of your retirement. So what does this mean if you're actually approaching retirement with $1.5 million? Don't start by asking, is $1.5 million enough? Start with a better question. How much do I need to withdraw from my portfolio each year? And what happens if the market falls immediately after I retire? That's the stress test. Step 1. Calculate your real portfolio withdrawal. Add up your expected annual retirement spending, then subtract reliable income such as Social Security or a pension. The amount left is what your portfolio needs to provide. For example, $96,000 annual spending minus $25,500 Social Security equals $70,500 from the portfolio. On a $1.5 million portfolio, that's about 4.7% in the first year. Now don't stop there. Ask yourself, could I temporarily spend less if my portfolio dropped sharply? If the answer is yes, you've already created an important safety valve. Step 2. Separate essential spending from flexible spending. This is one of the most useful things you can do before retirement. Not every dollar of spending has the same priority. Housing, food, utilities, insurance, and healthcare may be essential. Travel, entertainment, gifts, and some major purchases may be flexible. Create 2 numbers, essential spending and flexible spending. That gives you a much clearer picture of what you actually need from your investments. If the market falls, you don't necessarily have to cut everything. You can target the spending that has the most flexibility. That's much more realistic than assuming your lifestyle will remain exactly the same every year. Step 3. Decide what you'll do during a market crash before it happens. This is where many retirement plans fail, not because the investor doesn't have enough information, because they don't have a decision rule. Write down your response before the crisis arrives. For example, If my portfolio falls substantially, I will pause automatic spending increases and review my discretionary expenses. That's a simple rule. You can also decide how much cash you want available for near-term expenses and when you'll rebalance your investments. The exact numbers should match your situation. The important thing is to make the decision before fear takes over. Step 4. Don't treat a withdrawal rate as a guarantee. A withdrawal rate is a planning tool. It is not a promise. Your actual retirement outcome depends on many variables: portfolio allocation, market returns, inflation, taxes, spending, retirement length, and your behavior. That's why the idea of simply finding one safe percentage and following it forever is misleading. A 4 or 4.7% starting withdrawal rate doesn't guarantee success, and a higher rate doesn't automatically mean failure. The surrounding strategy matters. The main lesson. Here's what I want you to remember. A $1.5 million portfolio can look very strong on a spreadsheet, but retirement isn't a spreadsheet. Your portfolio will move, inflation will change, your spending will change, your life will change, so your plan needs room to change too. The biggest lesson from this stress test isn't that everyone needs to work longer. It isn't that everyone needs a huge cash pile. And it isn't that stocks are too risky for retirement. The real lesson is much simpler. Don't build a retirement plan that only works when everything goes according to plan. Build one that has options. If markets are strong, you may have room to spend more. If markets are weak, you may slow your spending increases. If you have cash reserves, you may avoid selling investments during a downturn. If you can earn income for a while longer, you may reduce portfolio withdrawals. Those small decisions can matter enormously over a 20 or 30-year retirement. So if you're approaching retirement with $1.5 million, don't panic, but don't assume you're automatically safe either. Stress test the plan before you need the plan, because the strongest retirement strategy isn't the one that predicts the future perfectly. It's the one that gives you enough flexibility to respond when the future doesn't cooperate.
If you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe right now because more powerful finance tips are coming ahead.